Welcome back to Radio Entrepreneurs. Again, my name is Jeffrey Davis. I'm the host. Always ready to talk to entrepreneurs. When the mics are off, that's what I do. I talk to entrepreneurs all day long in my other field of work, my main field of work, and that is chairman of the board, founder of Mage LLC. Also sitting with somebody who talks to a lot of entrepreneurs, that's John Dustin from JED Insurance. Hi, John.
Hey, Jeff. Happy to be here.
That's all we do, you and I, talk to entrepreneurs, right?
It's a good gig.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
Yeah, interesting people. And the next one, Michael Klein, pseudo-entrepreneur, we'll call him, co-founder, Econofact, right?
Yes, that's right.
Great. Now, Econofact, you're saying, is not a traditional organization, so tell us about it.
So, in the wake of the campaign of 2016 and the election, I was concerned about the lack of economics that was put forward by both candidates, and also the lack of understanding by the public. So I started an initiative where I got in touch with economists I knew, and we decided to launch by writing these short memos that people would, that economists would write, and we would edit. It was nonpartisan. It was focused on economic policy issues. And we launched in January of 2017 with 6 memos and 20 economists in our network. And now, some two and a half years later, we have more than 160 memos and more than 90 economists in our network from all over the country. And we have, we've been cited in lots of different news outlets for becoming a go-to resource for good economic policy advice and understanding economic policy. So I'm very proud of what we've done. But it's not a money-making thing. We're dependent upon donations, and we're getting grants from foundations to be able to continue our work.
Well, okay, so I think it's kind of obvious. What sort of motivated you to do this, and what were you doing before?
So I've been a professor for almost 30 years, but in 2010 to 2011, I worked in the Obama administration as the chief economist in the U.S. Treasury's Office of International Affairs. And on my first day of the job there, I asked my boss, the assistant secretary, what I should be doing. And he said, "You're smart, you'll figure it out." And at that point, I doubted both of those parts of the statement. But I decided my comparative advantage was to do research. So I ended up deciding to write these short memos that would go to the undersecretary, and sometimes to the secretary of the Treasury, and sometimes to the president. When I came back to Tufts, I decided to teach a class on that because that was a much more practical way for people to use their learning in econometrics and in economic analysis. And so that became kind of a natural idea of how to proceed with this. So the memos that we post are anywhere from like 800 to 2,000 words. They're short, they all have the same structure. They start off with what the issue is, then we list a bunch of facts, and then, and only then, the authors sort of tell of their opinion. And we make sure they're nonpartisan, everything is very fact-based, based on statistics or good economic analysis. And it's a way to try to, as I said, bridge the gap between academic economists who do interesting policy-related research and the public who doesn't really have access to that or the ability to read dense economic articles.
So what, for the entrepreneurs that are listening, what sort of white papers and memos are you putting out there for them to read?
What, say that again, sorry?
What sort of papers are out there from an entrepreneur? What are the subject matters?
So there's a really wide range of things. It's mostly on economic policy. For example, one of our recent memos by Dan Bergstresser, who's at Brandeis, is about whether or not share buybacks are a bad idea. And there's a view on the left that this is just not good because people are returning money instead of investing. But the money that people get, in fact, will then be reinvested in stocks. However, there is a real important tax issue called the step-up provision, where essentially very rich people can avoid paying any capital gains tax by bequeathing stocks to their heirs, and then there's no recorded capital gains. There's a lot we have on labor markets and the way in which labor markets operate, the role of women in labor markets, the role of immigrants in labor markets. There's a lot on trade. For example, we have a memo that I co-wrote with Mark Mellitz, who's at Harvard, about how bilateral trade statistics are essentially meaningless in a world of international supply chains. For example, an iPhone 7 that we import from China counts as a $225 deficit in our trade account. In fact, only $5 of that comes from China. The rest are parts that are coming from all over the world, including from the United States itself. But the trade deficit records it as a $225 deficit, but that's just, ignoring what's really going on in the world. So when an entrepreneur, if somebody's in business school, say, and they have to take an economics class, what they're learning is how do you operate in the sea? How do you sort of navigate in the world in which macroeconomic and other kinds of economic events are very important. So I think what we provide for entrepreneurs is a deeper understanding of the environment in which they're operating, be it immigration or labor markets or trade or tax policy or fiscal policy, a very wide range of things.
You say deeper, but it sounds like it's more accurate, that we're working under false assumptions.
That's sometimes the case. And sometimes these false assumptions or these false conclusions are political. For example, Schumer and Sanders complained about sort of the buybacks of stocks. Trump, is legendary now, I guess, for the number of inaccurate statements that he made.
They say Washington Post posted 10,000 lies.
10,000
Yeah,
lies,
10,000
yeah.
lies.
Oh my, that's a statistic you could give us some validation on.
Yeah, well, the Washington Post is doing a good job. And I think, in a lot of ways, our success with the media is because we're helping reporters do their job. We're providing a really important resource for them where we're bridging this academic policy divide and allowing people to see some of the top experts, if not in the country, in the world, on these issues and get access through a non-jargon, sort of fact-based, easily read article to understand what economists think about these issues. People have devoted their professional lives to understanding these things.
I'm sorry, you go.
No, I was gonna say, is the economy a little harder to track with the tech companies and the biotech companies as opposed to like agriculture and manufacturing?
Yeah, there's a lot of issues. In fact, there's also an issue that's very live right now about how well off are people. So if you think about, people are now making the argument that wage stagnation mischaracterizes things because people now have, iPhones and they can get a lot of entertainment and television that they couldn't have before. That's been true for a very long time. If you think, when I teach this, I talk about, my grandfather in his era, they didn't have airplanes, they didn't really have cars that are as safe as ours, but they also didn't have penicillin, and they didn't have open heart surgery, and they didn't have statins. So this is an ongoing challenge. And the service industry is harder to figure out the output of that in many ways than traditional manufacturing. Economists are aware of this, but it's a very difficult problem. And we have some memos that talk about that. Fellow Dan Sickle at Wellesley is one of the leading researchers in this topic, and he's written a number of memos for us on these kinds of issues.
I get worried that you're a small voice in an ocean of inaccurate data.
Well, we're trying to become a bigger voice.
Because I feel everywhere I go, people are living off of and making decisions based upon inaccurate data. When people are on the web and they're looking at stuff, it's not validated properly, it's not researched properly. And here you are, seem credible, seem very intelligent, but it's so much information that's out there, it just is not.
I take a contrary view of what you say. I think a lot of people and products are driven off predictive analytics now. They don't even think. Everything's, you go.
Yeah, but a lot of
Yeah.
social economic data that people have been giving me just recently, as they told me about the data, I have said to them just in the last few weeks, I've said, where did you get that data? And when I went to the source, I said, look at how the research is flawed from the base
Right.
base up.
So what we do is, the coin of the realm for us is that everything that we do is backed up and there's hyperlinks. You can check anything that we state. We've had almost 1 million page views by now. And we are being, the media in a way serves as a megaphone for us. So it's right, it's a hard battle. Hopefully, I'm not like Don Quixote just tilting at windmills. I think we are having some traction. But there's something.
I hope so.
I hope so too, because I've been spending a lot of time on this. And more than that, I think it's really important, all the economists who write for us, nobody gets paid. It's done out of a sense of social commitment.
But you have to have a balance, right-wing economists, left-wing economists.
You know, there's actually a lot less controversy in economics than you might think about many, many issues. And what happens is, you know, in the 90s, I had a radio show call me up and ask if I wanted to talk about NAFTA, and I said, okay, and they said, well, are you for NAFTA or against it? And I said, well, I'm for it, and the person said, well, we have a lot of people for it, I'm looking for somebody against it. So what happens is they'll call 100 people, 99 will say one thing, one will say another, then they'll present that one person and one of the other 99, and there's a false equivalence.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're trying to do is actually to present top flight researchers and top flight research, so people in the media don't have this false equivalence anymore. And I think, you know, people have been chagrined by what has happened over the last few years, people in the media, and they don't want to get it wrong. And they don't want to present everything as kind of a boxing match. But on the other hand, you know, they need the resources, and we provide a resource to them.
Again, we've been speaking with the very informed Michael Klein, co-founder Econofact, with John Dustin. Well, thank you, John. Michael, if somebody wants to track you, learn about you, follow you at Econofact, how would they do that?
Our website is econofact.org. That's ECONOFACT.org. And if you go on the website, there are very short forms of the memo. To see the full memo, either click on the title or where it says read more. And also you can sign up for our newsletter on the website where it says stay in the know. And we'll send you a newsletter every time we publish a new piece, which is once or twice a week.
I know somebody to my left who's going to sign up for that.
Absolutely.
Because he used to work for Chuck Schumer.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So he loves this stuff. So he'll be following you.
And get Chuck to sign up as well.
And
Absolutely.
he might be able to
His
do
own
that.
stuff.
And you know what? Maybe he'll be tracking some of your data for radio entrepreneurs and sharing that information, even with some of our clients.
Yeah.
He sends me monthly research. He could
Great.
maybe accumulate that. So thank you very much. We appreciate you being on the show. Thank you, John Dustin.
Thank you for having me, Jeff.
Great. Thank you, everybody. We're going to take a break. And don't forget, go online, go to YouTube. There's always more data every week from radio entrepreneurs.